Hello. Today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the differences between risographic printed and standard printed Tales from Smoking Wyrms. As you can tell here from issue 1, there's a substantial difference right off the bat. Issue 1, the risographic printed, was printed on cordwain paper for the cover stock, which is the same type of paper that was used in the early TSR publications, 1974-ish timeline. It's printed with gold ink and with black ink, and it features this, very, very different, stark cover as opposed to the colorized version, the standard version, which is printed on, probably like a Domtar paper. I'm betting. I think this is probably 110 pound, and it has a full color cover, a colorized version of the same scene here. And then it also has a laminate on it. On the back covers, you can see that coming across as well. You'll also notice that the limited editions are all numbered, whereas the unlimited standard editions are not. There are differences inside the cover, inside the issue, though. If you can look at the differences here, for instance, you can see differences in the way the ink is applied. Again, the risographic versus the standard edition. And there's nothing wrong with either one of these. As a matter of fact, this looks a little more contrasty than this does. But there are differences. In issue 1 in particular, issue 1 through 3, we also had these fold-out pages, right? And so you could see that things folded out. And such, whereas in the standard edition we don't have that at all. As a matter of fact, those pages had to be recreated in a very different way. And then what that means is that we had an off number, so we put a couple of ads in for some of our fellow third-party publishers, such as the standard setting by Breaker Press, Skull and Crossbones Classics, by Bob Brinkman and everything. And so that changes the way things are, and then we got a couple more ads out of that as well. So those are the differences between an issue like this. And this carried on to the second issue as well. Again, you can see the cover is very different. This is a two-tone cover in the limited edition versus the full colorized cover in the standard edition. This carries onto the back. Again, this is a numbered edition, where this one is not. This features cordwain paper, whereas this issue does not. And we had the same type of issue with the fold-out page. It's this one right here, I think. Yeah. This one may have never been folded out before. Fold-out page here for the center of the book, whereas that doesn't exist in the standard edition. For those of you who like things like fold-out pages and stuff, they present a really cool feature. They cost a lot of money to produce. And so we only do them now. Now that we've gone to standard editions as standard, afterwards, we don't do them as much. Although we still do special things for the risographic print run. This is printed on, both of these are printed on National Forest and NSF paper, right? So this is stuff that meets the National Standard for Forests, or whatever that is, a certificate for recycled paper. This is printed on Mohawk ultra fine or ultra smooth via, which is an excellent paper, and it just has excellent properties. You can see that there's little speckles throughout and everything. The risographic printing process is very different than the printing process that we see in something like this, which produces a completely different type of product. Here, this is digital printing, and so the blocks of color are very, very, spot on and very standard, and they're not speckled and stuff. And for many people, this is perfectly fine, but it doesn't produce the feel of the final, product that we get in the risographic printing. It's an excellent print run. There are also differences in art. We swapped out artists. Some pieces of art between the standard and the risographic printing. And so we've made some changes like that as well. Again, this carries through to like issue 3, where you can see with issue 3 a very different cover. And the cordwain here, because this is the heaviest overprint we'd ever done, the cordwain really gives this kind of mottled impression because these are the valleys and grooves of the paper. Whereas this, which has an alternate inked cover, looks very different. I actually like both quite a bit. I especially like this black lining on the bricks and everything, which looks very different than this here. And the same down here. I think this has just produced a really great tonal variation, and this is a really nice cover, as is this, for different reasons. This feels much more old school. It feels much more handmade. And risographic printing is known for some of these blemishes that make it, feel, this is just beautiful, isn't it? You can definitely see that there are color differences and everything. Both have their places, I think, and I am not opposed to both. Here we're dealing with a spot color, and this is something to consider, is that Tales from the Smoking Wyrm is a spot color magazine. And as a spot color magazine, it delivers a lot more punch and a lot more visual cues as to what's going on than a black and white. It also costs twice as much to print because we are printing in this different style. The paper, it's just got a feel. The ink has a smell that tells you this was made on a machine. Very indicative of the type of printing process. Issue 3 also has a fold-out page. This one right here, again on a Culpeper's Herbal. We really like doing that. I love fold-out pages, I have to tell you. I especially liked how this one came out. These mushrooms that we drew just came out phenomenal. And then it comes over into this one, Rites and Rituals, and you can see that crisp, clean difference. Oh man, it's just beautiful, isn't it? Yeah, really, really neat. If I could, I would have fold-out pages in every issue just for the fun of it. It is definitely a fun time. So you can see, again, this patterning and the patina across the ink distribution is very different than what you see over here in a standard edition, where you have very nice big blocks of very smooth color and everything. That's a very different thing. So yeah, it just feels different. Nothing wrong with it. Both of them are perfectly adequate, and they will both hold up to the test of time. The redo of this issue actually sees a lot of differences in art, and we went back and did a lot of different things. Let's see if I can find these 2 pages. So you can see here that we've actually filled in quite a bit on the standard edition that didn't exist on this. And I love this. This work by Jay Tanaka to produce these little things is really cool. This has a great feel. When you go back and look at it, it's got a little bit less punch, I think. And we're dealing with a solid, very specific type of color here. Risographic printing, there's about 30 colors that you can choose from, and you can overlap those and produce color variants, which we started doing with issue 5 or 6. But, it produces a very different color profile and a very different feel and everything. So this issue had a cool spotlight on one of the regular characters that shows up, the little necromancer, Dieter von Trevich, named by Joel Phillips and drawn by Joel Phillips. And this gives you this kind of inside setting. Here we didn't have that. On the standard edition, we were really only 1 page off, and so this was taken out, and we put in a 1-page ad because obviously we had that 3-page fold out, which is 2 pages. And then we get to there. So, so that's the major differences in the first 3. After that, the differences become less severe until you get to issue 6. Issue 5 and 6, they all have different colored covers and things like this. For instance, if you look at the difference between issue 5 It's got an extremely different color profile for the covers. This has a very handmade feel, and we're big fans of that handmade feel. And, you know, again, you look at the way the reds pop. And they do, you know, they do a good job in the non-risographic edition, but gosh, that's just a beautiful color. You know, the whole thing came out so nice. This was a good issue. I really liked this one. So, you know, something to keep in mind when you look at that and compare it to, you know, this still pops, but it doesn't feel the same. It has a different feel. And for those of you who aren't fans of that, who, you know, that isn't a thing, then it's not a big issue. Standard editions work just fine. I certainly would not disavow them. You know, they still look good. Issue 6, very different color profile on the cover. This was a complicated cover to pull off. It has a neon color, which doesn't translate, but you can really see it here. It's beautiful, absolutely beautiful color. And at this point, we've moved away from the Cordwain covers. They only exist on the first 3 limited editions. And we've moved to a standard Mohawk paper with a laminate, and that has to do with the color bleed issues. If you look at the backs of the older issues, they got the black really bled when it was fresh, and you can fix that, by the way. I have an entire video on it, but somewhere I have the appropriate eraser here. Oops. Just a regular rubber eraser. If you just do a light pass, you'll remove the majority of that black ink that was over inked. This is a normal feature of a risographic process, especially when you're dealing with intense colors, and we're dealing with pretty high color saturation on these. And it didn't work well. The color wasn't great with the ink didn't work well with the Cordwain paper, which is why we sadly abandoned it. I've got to tell you, I love Cordwain. It's a great paper, but we had to abandon it. Here, in issue 6, the biggest issue was the internal figure with the pull-out figure 3, right? So we've got a little actual folder in here. That continued to persist in issue 6. This one actually doesn't have it because I haven't glued it in yet. This is just one of my back stocks. So you can see that. In future issues of 6, when we go to retail or distribution copies, I'm going to have to get rid of that because I'm not going to be able to do that intensive of work. It's just not worth my time. And so these types of features exist in the limited editions and won't exist in the standard editions going forward. Issue 6 was what showed me that I could do 400 or 500 of these, but I couldn't do thousands. So it's not in the cards. Another thing, again, that continues to be an issue is the amount, the difference in the vibrancy of colors between the risographic and the standard edition. Here I'll swap them back because I've had Riso on this side the whole time. So you can definitely see them on the covers to the Riso versus standard edition and such. Everything is a little different, right? It just changes. The intensity of color in the risographic printing is something that is extremely appealing. It still looks good in the standard edition, there's no doubt, but it looks great in the risographic printing. It is just such a unique printing style, and it definitely produces an intensity that is unparalleled. I'm trying to get to the first front plate here for the gin. Look at that. Just beautiful. And that's no less beautiful here In the standard edition, actually this is probably pretty close, still looks great. But this just, it feels like a better product. The hand feel, you know, the printing, a little soft on the edges sometimes, and that means a lot, it turns out. So, intensely black, but also absorbed into the page, looks very different. Yeah, it just does. So those are kind of the main differences between risographic and standard editions. Higher quality paper in the risographic edition, more bold, intense colors in the risographic edition, some limitations that has to do with the printing methodology itself and everything. And they're also signed and numbered. Once we went to a laminated cover, we moved they're numbered. We moved to the numbering in the inside back page. And so that's that too. And then we get into, with this issue 8 is the first one that's a full distribution copy. And so it's got a little ISBN barcode and a different type of SKU number. The BVP SKU numbers are all pre-distribution SKU numbers, whereas the SWM SKU numbers are post-distribution and stuff. And so when you see those, issue 9 also has it. You can see that we've got these itty-bitty barcodes and everything and stuff, so that, you know, the traditional systems can use those. So that's the differences. You know, they're both a lovely product, I have to say. I don't disavow the standard editions. I pick them up equally as well. I use them on my desk. I also use the limited editions. I will say that what I have gotten is a lot of comments from people who own the risographic editions, where they buy the risographic edition to appreciate themselves and then buy a standard edition to put on the table. I think that's awesome. You know, it's probably what I would do myself, because the last thing I want is my really nice risographic editions, especially the first 3 issues, to get messed up. They're hard to come by, and they do wear a bit. And so that's a real part of it. So there is a differences between risographic and standard editions. One last thing, if you can find them, the original Kickstarter versions of many of the books come with things like bookmarks, and these are usable bookmarks. Actually, they have this is a Shoggoth familiar character sheet, you know, marking off how many different types of different herbs you've got. And this is a brain rat, a telepathic rat character sheet as well. And so, yeah, very cool stuff. And just to pitch one more thing, they store great in our little boxes. Designed for 3 issues. Great spine. They look really great when you've got 3 or 4 of them on a shelf. Keep them all intact, and everything else. So there you have it. Standard versus risographic versions of Tales from the Smoking Wyrm.